Today I'm going to teach you a line design based on the Japanese style of floral arranging called Ikebana. I don't like to say I'm teaching you Ikebana because it takes years of education and studying under a sensei to really become a master of Ikebana. I am not. So I'm going to teach you a line design. All right, we'll get started. Your material list for a line design is a low lomi dish. This is a 6-inch lomi dish. A kenzan, or a pin, or a frog. You might hear it called any one of those things. A kenzan is the Japanese term. You're going to need your snips. You're going to need tacky tack. Well, that's what I call it. I'm not quite sure. It's this adhesive. It's an adhesive tacky tack. All right, you'll need that. Water. Your botanicals for today are Israeli ruscus, Gerbera daisies, a favorite for many people, a curly willow branch, and some English ivy. We will cover 7 steps in the Ikebana line design. Step 1 is to adhere your kenzan to your lomi dish. To adhere your kenzan to your lomi dish, you get a little piece of tacky tack, just a pea size, put it on the bottom of your kenzan, and then asymmetrically, meaning off center, put your kenzan in the dish. Notice that the kenzan is off center, not in the center of the design. Ikebana is very much about things being asymmetrical, not symmetrical. After you put your kenzan in the bowl, set it aside for a minute, and that gives the tacky tack some time to adhere to both the bowl and the kenzan. Step 2 is preparing your botanicals. But I noticed as I was standing here staring at my flowers that I picked all botanicals that are already really nice and clean. There are no leaves to take off a Gerbera daisy. We will be separating the curly willow off the stem, but I do that as I'm designing. So I want to see the design first and then trim my curly willow to put in there. So I'm not even going to do that. So lucky today, not much to prepare, but in Ikebana designs that you might try to do at home, you might have material at this point that needs to be cleaned off, and this is when you would do it. After you're done cleaning your botanicals, you're ready for step 3. And step 3 is adding your water to your lomi dish. You pour water in, and it needs to come up and cover the majority of the pins. You always work into water. You never work into a dry vase, or in this case, a dry lomi dish. Always work into water. A downside of working on this design with this low lomi dish is that now that water can easily spill. But that little inconvenience is totally made up by how beautiful this design is at the end, or at least that's my opinion. Step 4 is creating your line, and we use the ruscus to create our initial 3 insertions, our initial line for the whole design. In Japanese style arrangements such as Ikebana, there are 3 main lines: heaven, man, and earth. Your heaven line, shin, is your tallest. My apologies, I don't speak Japanese, so I might say the Japanese words wrong. Your man line, soe, is the middle line, and your earth line, tai, is your lowest line. Heaven, man, earth. This is the longest. This is the middle, and this is your shortest. But also notice that they angle differently also. In using my ruscus to create my line, I'm going to pick the one out that is the thinnest or the least dense to be my heaven line. Since it is the longest line that reaches up to heaven, it really doesn't need to be bulky. Your heaven line should be 1.5 to 2 the diameter of your bowl. So I'm going to measure that by placing the ruscus to the bowl. I'm going to put my finger at the size of the bowl. I'm going to move up about 1/2 for 1.5. Put my finger here at the edge of the bowl again, and I know I need to cut right below my thumb and forefinger. That is my heaven line, and I am going to stick the heaven line into the center of the kenzan, give it a little bit of an angle, and just push it into the pins. People ask me all the time, is it in between the pins or over the pins? It is just however your stem stands, however you want it to stand. So sometimes it's in between the pins and sometimes it's right straight over the pins. Do be careful because they are sharp and you can stick yourself. That is my heaven line. Notice it's in the center of the kenzan. It's going to be the tallest one. It's sitting at a slight angle. I'm going to save the larger leaf, more dense one to be the earth line. The man line needs to be shorter than the heaven line. So I just eye it to be about 2 inches shorter. Make your cut. I'm placing the man line in the center of the kenzan at a slight angle. Heaven, man. As I mentioned, this design is very asymmetrical. So not only do you have the lines being at different heights, you have them being at different angles, and you're really creating a triangle. What I mean by triangle is visually these lines that the insertions make create a triangle. So that's what it would look like looking straight onto the design. And if you were looking straight down on the design, even my insertions will create a triangle. Your earth line is going to be shorter than your man line. So the same as I did between man and heaven, I'm going to eye earth to be about 2 inches shorter than the man line and make my cut. Notice that I have kept some of the leaves low in the stem, and that's okay because that will help cover the kenzan a little bit. Earth can be inserted in 2 ways. We can insert earth standing up at a slight angle, or we can insert earth laying down farther at an angle. For this design, I've chosen to have it stand up just a little bit. If I look down on my design, I can see that triangle. I am going to save these leftover stems of ruscus for the end of the design. Step 5 is creating line with our Gerbera daisies. In creating my Gerbera line, I want my heaven line to be the smallest flower head. So I'm going to look at my 3 Gerberas and I'm going to pick the one with the smallest head to be the heaven line. In sizing your flower line, you just want to come down about 1 inch from the line that it's in front of or the line that it's representing. So this is the heaven line. It's going to be about 1 inch shorter than the leaf heaven line. I'll make my cut and insert by poking it into the pins. If you don't like where the flower lands when you do that, with Ikebana it's okay to not recut your stem because you're just poking it into the pins and it's going to create a new set of holes for the water to be absorbed. So that's okay. There is my Heaven Gerber daisy line. I have 2 Gerbras left. I'm going to save the largest head to be the earth line and take the medium-sized head to be man. You insert the man line of your Gerbera right in front of the man line of your Ruscus. This line design is a one-sided design, meaning that it's only viewed from one way, and in this case, that is the front of the design. This is the back of the design. Now we're ready for earth. Earth will be placed in front of the earth Ruscus line. It wasn't the right height. Pulling it out, giving it a little bit of a trim, and getting earth a little lower in the design. I just love this design. It's so simple, yet beautiful. When working with Gerber daisies, you have to be careful because the center of the daisies can look like eyes. So in this other design that I made here, I'm going to show you what I mean. If I placed my man and earth line side by side like this, it looks like this design is looking at you, that it has eyes, that it's watching you. And you don't want that. You always want to make sure when you insert your stems that they're all facing a slightly different angle so you don't have that creepy face looking at you. Step 6 is a lot of people's favorite, adding your curly willow. The nice thing about the curly willow is it's just an accent to the design. So it doesn't have to follow any rule of being 1 inch higher or 1 inch shorter than anything else in the design. You can let the curly willow just be an accent that just adds interest. You don't want to go crazy and just add this whole thing like that. That throws off the balance of the design. So even though you are a little more free with this, you still have to make sure that you're thinking of balance. You may use your snips or bunch cutters to cut your curly willow stems. One of the things that you do want to create with a curly willow stem is some height. So I'm going to look in here and see which one of these little stems will create that height, that line that I want. These 2 curl over, so that's not going to create that straight up visual line that I want to make. So it's going to have to be this one. I trimmed off and saved the other 2, and here I have my nice curly willow line. In looking at my design, I felt that I needed to add something right here. So that's where this height line is going to go. Curly willow is going to have a mind of its own. I'm going to push it into the Kenzan and just hope that I like it. It's leaning a little too forward, so I'm just going to go back in and lean it towards the back and to the side a little bit more. There, I like that. An extra accent line. Now I'm going to look at the other 2 lines, and even though these lines aren't following any rules of height or length or how I'm inserting them, I am still thinking of that triangle, and I am still thinking of heaven, man, and earth lines. So they still follow those ideas, but there's not any strict rules as to measurements. I feel this design has a real big hole right here that needs something in there. So I think that's where one of these sticks with the curl is going to come in handy. It's going to add some bulk at the bottom of the design. I am choosing this one that does not close, and it has this extra little stem to fill that open area. It's important to create weight at the bottom of a design. That makes the design feel like it's sitting nice and solid on a surface. By adding this branch right here, I filled this gap, but I also added more visual weight to the bottom of this design. I liked that it curled back towards the design, and that leads your eye back into the design. Your eye doesn't go look at something else. It sees that stem and it rotates back right to the design. Adding my third piece of curly willow, I look at the design and I see to create some balance in the sticks, to create a triangle, I definitely need to add something on this side. My dilemma right now is whether I keep the curl or I cut it off. I'm going to think about that for a second. As a floral artist, you have a choice of what to do here. I was just discussing with Molly whether I should keep the loop or take the loop away. Molly would keep the loop. That is her artistic vision. I'm actually thinking of snipping the loop off. That's my artistic vision. Neither one is incorrect. It's just how you're seeing the design come along. My idea was not to compete with this loop and to keep your eye going back down there. Maybe I should cut this off. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, once you make the snip, there's no going back. So hopefully it still looks okay. And here's the thing. The people that are going to see this design won't ever know that I had to make that decision. What do you think? The only change I made after making the insertion is I twisted a little bit so that this curve came back into the design instead of away or out of the design. As you should do with all designs, but it's harder with this one, is you should bring the design up to eye level because that's how most people are going to see it, and make sure there isn't anything missing. It looks good. Step 7 is covering your Kenzon. As you see, you can still see some of the Kenzon. That is okay in Ikebana, but we are going to cover it just a little bit and add some more interest. This is why we saved some of our ruscus. I'm trimming it with some of the leaves at the very tip here, and we're going to use this to cover the Kenzon. You do not want to overdo it here. You don't want to create a huge mess at the bottom of this very simple, beautiful design. But you do just want to add a little bit of detail to cover that Kenzon, gives the design a little more weight also. I'm going to take those little pieces and again, in a triangular form, add your little extra pieces of ruscus. That adds visual weight and finishes off the design a little bit. We could end this here. It's a finished design. It's beautiful. I'm happy with how it looks. But Molly went out and got some really cool ivy, and we're just going to add an extra line in there to add some more interest. This is still part of step 7 of covering your Kenzon. I like how this ivy flows and that there's a little dense area of leaves right here, so that's where I'm going to make my cut, is right above that dense area of leaves. This is very much just an artistic addition to this design. Doesn't have anything to do with the heaven, man, earth lines or any tradition or cultural element to this design. It's just strictly something else to add for art, for your eye to see. What you did not see is that this gave me fits putting it into that Kenzon, but I finally got it in and just added this little visual line flowing out of the design. The color of the flowers, the addition of the curly willow sticks brings your eye back into the design. You have to be careful about creating a line that leads you away from your design. You will have a tendency as the onlooker to just go, oh, I'm gonna go look over here when you create a line like that. What balances that is all that's going on over here. Color, line, interest with the curly willow, and some bulk with the ruscus leaves. And that completes your line design. Some of the vocabulary I want you to listen for is line. This is a line design, very important. You have your heaven line, your man line, your earth line, or in Japanese, very bad Japanese, I'm sorry, is shin, so, and tai. I also want you to think about the vocabulary of balance, asymmetry, and visual weight. To recap your vocabulary, you have heaven, man, earth, shin, so, tai. We created balance in this design with our visual weight of the bigger things at the bottom and creating some heaviness with the leaves at the bottom. And this whole design is an example of asymmetry. There's not anything symmetrical about this design. All the cuts are at different heights. There's triangles everywhere with the leaves, with the sticks, with the flowers. And the kenzan itself is off to center, so there's no symmetry. Everything is asymmetrical in this design. And that is what makes it so beautiful. Step 6 is add in sticks. I had to do it.
Hey. Hi, Zargos. Hi.